Hey guys, it's our season final episode. Thanks so much for sharing with your friends, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and following us on our social media platforms. Who do we have this week, Martin?
This week we have Demondrae Thurman, and he's teaching us how to create an international career as a soloist, chamber musician, and educator.
My name is Artina McCain.
My name is Martin McCain.
And we are here helping you build your best musical life through transformational interviews,
performance content,
and educational tips. Wow. You guys, I'm a pianist, as many of you know, and I'm just blown away by what Demondrae has created on the euphonium. I'm a snob, it's true, but I mean, wow. If you don't know who he is, you will definitely know after this is over. If you've been a fan of his for a long time, you're going to enjoy this interview.
Hey everyone, we want to thank you all for joining us, and we have the Demondrae Thurman here. Demondrae, thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure to be here with you guys. Such a treat.
Absolutely. So, of course, we know all about your career, and actually, I'm pretty sure the majority of our followers do. But
there might be a pianist out there.
Yeah, that's true. So for the people who don't know who Demondrae Thurman is, could you let us know, what you're doing, where do you teach? Just about your career.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. So what I'm doing currently now, other than sitting in my car, as you can see, is I teach at Indiana University. I'm the euphonium professor and coordinator of brass chamber music at Indiana, and my duties include teaching euphonium, coordinating and coaching brass chamber music, and I conduct the brass choir and brass band while I'm there. I also teach part-time at Samford University, which is a liberal arts college, Christian college in Birmingham, Alabama, and I live in Tuscaloosa, so I live a crazy life as a commuter. In addition to those things, pre-COVID, I function as a soloist and chamber music player and extra and sub with orchestras, so I've been all around the globe, playing, any variety of music you can think of, from jazz to Mahler. So that's me in a nutshell.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. Yeah, I mean, just I always say you're you're like James Brown, you're like the busiest man in show business. It's awesome, watching all the stuff you do.
Man, sometimes I think I'm crazy, but having a well-rounded life in music, I couldn't ask for a better thing. It's so awesome to be able to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, that's a huge blessing, actually, to have a well-rounded career. Now, I'm curious, how do you function commuting, Demondrae? People always ask us that, so I got to throw the question at you. How does that work?
Yeah, it's been an evolution, really, in my career. I've been lucky to have 3, serious university jobs in the state of Alabama, which is the state where I've wanted to live, all of my life because of my family roots. Both sides, mom and dad, everybody lives here in Tuscaloosa. So, as they age and, as my nephews and nieces get older, I've had a great time being around, and I never wanted to change that. So when I took the job at IU back in 2017, I had to plan, sort of what my life was going to look like. And so, the administration at IU was gracious enough to give me the opportunity to try to do the job as a commuter. So what I've done is I fly up, either the day of or the day before I have to do any work. So for instance, this year, I conduct the brass groups on Sunday nights, starting at 8. So I catch a late morning flight from Birmingham, fly to Indianapolis. There's a car at the airport. I get in my car that's been parked at the airport. I drive to Bloomington, and I'm there Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and I catch an afternoon flight home on Wednesday. So that's sort of my commute for work. So I have 2 vehicles. One stays here in Tuscaloosa, one stays in Bloomington. And so I'm always paying, parking at an airport. Yep. So that's the sort of crux of it. And then at any other, sort of additional work to that, performances, gigs, that sort of thing. Usually I'm flying from one of those two airports, and sometimes it's triangulated. Fly from Indianapolis, go to wherever I'm going, then fly to Birmingham from there. It's kind of crazy, but I do have help, planning that travel, and my assistant does a really good job making that happen for me.
Oh, that's amazing. So, and especially you said help. I mean, that's like the important thing, just having a team together to just make your life a lot easier. That's awesome.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. My wife does a great job of, making sure I can do all of that too. Sometimes we get our wires crossed because like you two, she's a university professor working at a different school as well. And she's got her own, crazy lifestyle, concertmaster, 4 orchestras. Plus we have 2 kids, 13 and 11. So they're at the point where their extracurriculars are busy and, we make it work though.
Oh man, that sounds exhausting just when you said it. Did you say she's a concertmaster at 4 different orchestras? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, concertmaster of 4 different orchestras. Yeah, the regional, per service kind of groups.
Wow.
Wow.
Yep, that's Boeings and turning them in early. You guys know the routine. Yeah, it's crazy.
Gosh.
Well, that is crazy. You guys must have a few live-in nannies then, I would expect.
We have a lot of good help between family and, care.com. We do okay.
Okay, all right. So we always like it when we have a musical couple and your wife's a violinist, as you just mentioned. Do you all collaborate at all, or what does that look like as a team, or are most of your career pretty separate?
Our careers, for the most part, are pretty separate. As we've, gotten on into our careers, we're looking for opportunities to collaborate more. So my last recording that I put out back in 2014 has a piece on it for euphonium and violin. It's called Snapshots, written by a good friend of mine, Patrick Schultz. Used to play in the Sotto Voce Quartet, as a matter of fact. He wrote a single movement piece for the two of us to play at his wedding, which would have been in like 99 or 2000.
Whoa.
And we loved it. People loved it, and so we asked him to write more music, and he ended up writing a 5-movement, pretty big piece. It's maybe 18 minutes long.
Wow.
For violin and euphonium. So we've recorded that. We've performed it a number of times now. We've performed it in New York, in North Carolina, in Alabama, obviously. And John Stevens, my old teacher from the University of Wisconsin, wrote 2 pieces for us 2 summers ago now. That we've started to finally learn. COVID provided that opportunity. So we'll get a chance to premiere those at some point whenever we can perform live again. And I'm sure we'll make plans to record them. But other than that, the only other times we play together is when I conduct. I conduct part-time, or I conduct as the sort of resident assistant conductor for the Tuscaloosa Symphony, which is our local semi-pro, per-service orchestra. And she's concertmaster there. So we've done that a few times. And I've also played trombone or euphonium in orchestras where she's concertmaster. So that's about it in terms of our collaboration.
Wow. That's amazing. Especially when you have a spouse who's in the business, so they get it. And especially like when you're getting busy and yeah, that's always nice.
Absolutely. It does help. And, we've worked it out in the past to where, we each sort of take it on the chin for the other. Usually the academic year is when I'm the most, sought after, if you will. People bringing me in to play concerts and do master classes. And traditionally the summer's her time. She does the Eastern Music Festival. She's assistant principal second violin for the festival orchestra. So there's, certain responsibilities that go with that. And that's a 5-week thing where we literally pick up the family and move to Greensboro, North Carolina for 5 weeks every summer. So that's her time to shine, do what you need to do. I'm on dishes and on food duty and, that's her time, So we have a good balance that way.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So, okay, I know you and Martin, you guys know everything about this amazing euphonium player, but then we might have some other people in our audience who are string players and pianists, and they're like, wait, a euphonium player? And his career, he's touring all over the world because we're snobs. Let me just be honest, okay? Pianists and violinists and singers, we're snobs. We think that we own the orchestral stage when it comes to being a soloist, but you have shattered every single one of our dreams, Demondrae. So can you tell people what was that work ethic like to become a solo euphonium player? And I mean, killing it is a small word to say for what you have done in your career.
Well, I can honestly say, and like many of us, like you two, like a lot of our friends in the field, trying to be as excellent as you can be is first order of business. You just got to take care of being ready, when your number is called, So I wouldn't call myself somebody who loves to practice. And what I mean by that is I don't wake up and, at 8:30 my routine starts and, I'm just not that guy. But I've always worked pretty hard not to sound bad. And that's weird. Like, that's the way I look at it. I don't want to sound bad versus dying to sound great. You know what I mean? When I present myself, it has to be, at my acceptable level, which is really quite high. And so that's the first thing I try to take care of. The second thing that I feel like happened to me is in the mid 90s, there wasn't a lot of people that looked like me who played at the level that I was playing. And so I think because of that, I picked up some breaks, being Black, being excellent in a time where that wasn't too big a thing, whereas now there's Black excellence all over the place, in classical music. And so the tuba euphonium community really embraced me. And so I was a headliner at, the international conferences as a 25-year-old, for example. Wet master's degree, just started teaching, a year into my teaching job at an HBCU. I taught at Alabama State. I was already being a headliner, as a soloist with orchestra, at the big convention. So got some breaks that way, and just word of mouth, and that's still the way it goes. Oh God, we heard this really young, great, soloist. Oh, let's invite him out to the school. Well, let's have him play with the orchestra. Or let's have him play with the wind ensemble when he gets here. And then the word just spreads. And again, the thing that I've tried to take care of the very most is just making sure that I'm crushing it. When I get out on stage to play. So I feel like through that, the opportunities have continued to come.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I remember when I first heard about you was through your work with Sotto Voce, and you mentioned it before. So how does Sotto Voce come about, or you can tell our audience who Sotto Voce is?
Sure. So the Sotto Voce Quartet is my primary chamber music ensemble. It's a quartet made up of 2 euphoniums and 2 tubas primarily. So first 2 seats obviously are euphonium. The third seat is an F tuba, and the fourth seat is a C tuba. And that's very similar to the way a string quartet is set up: 2 violins, a viola, and a cello. And so, we formed as a student ensemble at the University of Wisconsin. I had one wish when I went to graduate school. Well, 2. One was to make sure I didn't have to pay for it. And second is that I had a tuba quartet ready for me to play with. And John Stevens at the University of Wisconsin was able to grant me both those things. Hey, we got a nice fellowship for you, and we have, 3 guys waiting on you, to make a tuba quartet. So when I got to Wisconsin, we started playing gigs right away. Before school started, that group that I'm talking about started doing work. And we started out by just like busking and, playing out on the streets. Wisconsin has a street called State Street, which leads literally from the School of Music up to the Capitol, the capital of the state. And so on game day Saturdays, we would get out there and, put out a tuba hat and start, put a few dollars in there, some coins, and start playing music. And so we did that for 2 years as students, in addition to, participating in competitions like the Fish Off and New York Concert Artists Guild. And we had some success, minimal success, meaning we at least got to go there. We never made it past the semis, but we did go to New York. We did go to South Bend to compete. And those kind of things sort of inspired us, in addition to wanting to see a group that had instruments in it like ours that had some kind of a national stage. We really loved the Kronos Quartet, for example, the Kronos String Quartet. That group, along with the Meridian Arts Ensemble Brass Quintet, were the groups we wanted to model ourselves after. They were doing serious, new, cutting-edge kind of stuff in addition to absolutely crushing the old standards. And so we modeled ourselves that way. And so that's still kind of what we do. We generate about 90% of our repertoire, if I had to make up a percentage. And it's a collection of new music by the composers in the group, as well as arrangements by all of us in the group. And so we've sort of kept that canon. And again, because of our uniqueness in terms of a chamber music ensemble and its construction, me being Black, and a bunch of low brass cats, we were able to get some breaks early. And again, just try to crush it every time. That group has a chip on its shoulder. It wants to go and make sure that when we leave a concert, people go, yeah, we've missed the boat by not having a group like that before. So we still keep that chip on our shoulder.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm driving now. My son has to get a haircut.
Oh, well, I'm impressed. I'm like, wow, he did not miss a beat. His son got in the car. He knows what's going on. The work ethic has been passed down.
That's that organization that we need.
So also with Sotto Voce, I've noticed that you guys do play other instruments. Like sometimes you can see you playing trombone or someone playing sousaphone. What's up with that?
Yeah, that's right. That's a great observation. So when we started, the name of that type of group is Tuba Quartet. And we decided that we wanted to have some different colors and take advantage of the fact that all of us played something else, and something else at a high level, but still in the low brass, vein. And so while we're looking for ways to expand our repertoire, we also look for ways to expand our sound. So when we got into, trying to do transcriptions of stuff like Frank Zappa and, playing early music, we wanted to have, close to, authentic sounds as we could. So of course that led us to playing some trombone, and when we started playing more of the, sort of Dixieland and, jazz centric, stuff, the sousaphone was an obvious, pickup in that group. And in addition, or in that realm, and in addition to that, particularly early on when Nat McIntosh was playing with us, he to me was the sousaphone virtuoso, at the time. I mean, he learned all the classical stuff that you're supposed to learn, but then he was studying those New Orleans guys and smashed that together and made a sound that everybody is still trying to copy. All the great professional tuba players, all the young kids growing up, and he was in our group. And so we had to let him flex, on the sousaphone, which gave us a whole different thing. I'll give you for example. We did a Christmas concert once with the Mobile Symphony, one of my wife's orchestras. And, we did a bunch of arrangements. And one of the things we did was we played Bugler's Holiday, the standard dum 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 ding.
Oh boy, I played it many times.
Yeah, so three of us played euphonium. We were the three trumpet players, and Nat on sousaphone played all the other parts between multiphonics and all kind of percussive stuff on it. It was insane, and so that was just something he could do, and so that brought a whole uniqueness to what we could bring to the table. It was awesome. So it was fun to do that, fun to explore, playing the other instruments.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So now I want to talk about like your solo career, because actually I remember that was the first time I met you. You were in residence at the University of Southern Mississippi when I was in school.
Sure.
When did you, decide like, I want to break into like doing like solo work and making the euphonium a solo instrument?
Well, I'm not sure that decision was mine. The way our instrument, the euphonium for the listenership, doesn't have a traditional place in the canon, in the classical music world. We don't have a traditional spot. Most of us, particularly during my day, trained to try to win a military band job. But, being overweight, that wasn't something I could do. I actually auditioned for the Marine Band in 1996. and made the finals. And, you know, the next thing they make you do is step on the scale to make sure you're military specs. And so that just wasn't on the table for me. And so, you know, what that made clear is that my job was going to be either at a university somehow, or I was going to have to focus on trombone and try to win an orchestra job. You know, that was it. So I was lucky enough to get a university job. But the other thing we do is we have a bunch of competitions for the instrument. You know, everybody, you know, set up some kind of euphonium competition. And I was lucky enough to do well in some of those, not even the big ones, not the Falcone competition or Liexa or Jeju, none of the big ones. I never did well in those. But in some of the sort of smaller ones, I was able to have some success. And I was lucky enough to have prominent judges on those competition panels, which, you know, sort of saw a uniqueness in the way that I played. And a lot of them liked it. A lot of the most prominent ones, you know, maybe, you know, the one that moved the needle the most early on for me was Pat Sheridan,
Wow.
who at the time was the number one tuba, you know, guy in the world, really. And so he became a fan kind of early, along with Sam Palafian, and, you know, and I had support by a lot of the other big names. And so a lot of them were encouraging me to write pieces that, you know, or get pieces written for me and sort of my strengths as a doubler, both jazz and classical and things of that nature. So those seeds were planted kind of early. And people took the opportunity to write for me. And once that happened, I have to play that music. So I was figuring out ways to play that music. And again, luckily, I was able to get a lot of invitations early on to colleges to go primarily to teach. But because of that, you get to play a recital. And sort of everything builds out from there.
Wow.
Whoa, that's really good advice for, you know, any of our audience members who are graduating, is to do those early recitals at universities, and you just kind of build your career and your repertoire based off of those opportunities. So thanks for saying that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, one of the things that I struggle with as a teacher of young people now is, you know, you can work for, you know, an hour and put a 35-second, you know, clip on Instagram or wherever, and you sound incredible. But if you can't back that up when someone calls you and says, hey, we want to collaborate with you, you know, then that false advertisement did you more harm than it did good for those likes that you got right that second, you know. And that one's tough, you know. And back in my day, you know, you heard me live, and that's what it was, chip notes and all. And if I got an invitation, you know, after that performance, I was pleased, because I certainly wouldn't have been happy with it all, you know. Whereas now, you know, if I just chose to, which I don't, you know, I could do like a lot of people do and work my tail off to get 2 good minutes that, you know, are the best playing I ever did. Plus it's edited and it not represented.
Oh, calling him out.
I'm just saying.
I'm glad you said that.
It's true.
That's true. That's very true.
It's true. I have a tough time with it, because I want, you know, I know how exposure works now, but I also want it to be honest information, you know, at least for the students that I have any say in how they do their thing. I want it to be honest. Don't put anything out there that you can't do.
That is, yeah. And actually, speaking of that, in COVID, I think more people are getting good at their video editing skills and figuring out, you know, how to make themselves sound really, really good.
Just saying, unless you hope to monetize or get your concert enjoyment, you know, in your, you know, your practice room, like we've all been doing all summer. If you don't plan to do it live, then great, go for it. But if you plan to do it live, you better be able to deliver.
That's great.
That's
you
the truth.
plan to do it live, you better be able to deliver. I like it. So, Demondrae, you're always a really busy man, touring all over the world. Like, what has COVID-19 been like for you? I know you mentioned having some opportunities to practice some other stuff, but what have you been loving, learning, or reorganizing during this time?
Sure, that's a great question. From a non-musical perspective, I really did enjoy the time spending with my family. For example, you know, we would randomly have like family movie night where the 4 of us would, you know, bake cookies or popcorn or whatever, and, you know, sit down and watch a movie. what we were able to establish over COVID was we're going to do dinner in the living room and we're going to watch TV together during dinner. You know, kind of crazy, you know, breaking away from the traditional canon of sitting around the kitchen table, or the dining room table, you know, with our cell phones down. Instead, we engage, you know, this TV time because my kids are old enough now that they have their own stuff that they want to do. You know, they have their friends they want to FaceTime with and, you know, video game with. So we established that about hour and a half time frame every night to hang together. And it was fun, you know, and we were watching shows like Blackish and things of that nature that allowed us to have talking points, you know, with, you know, some of the stuff that's happening in the real world. So that was fun. I worked out 5-6 days a week. You know, I built a pretty nice home gym, you know, over time that I was able to utilize. That was cool. I watched The Wire, which I never had an opportunity to do. I watched every single episode of The Wire, which was incredible. So that was fun. Those are all things that I never had the opportunity to do. And from a musical standpoint, you know, I took the opportunity to work on things that, you know, I felt like I needed improvement, you know, in my playing. So I spent a lot of time working on the low register, just sort of, you know, honing my thoughts about it and, you know, making sure that what I tell people to do, I'm actually doing. And if I'm not, what is it that I'm actually doing? So I did a little bit of sort of self-analysis that way. And I learned 6 new pieces.
Wow.
So that's what I did. It was great. It was great. It really was great. I mean, you know, and that's in addition to, you know, doing a bunch of podcast interviews and, you know, recording my part for virtual concerts and, you know, doing a bunch of teaching, you know, virtually, you know, all of that. That felt like, you know, my normal type work. But outside of that, you know, those other things took up my time.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm kind of like, oh, I need to go check out The Wire.
Yeah, I've never seen it either.
Yeah, I need to do that one.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible.
I watched a lot of Netflix, but that wasn't it. That wasn't one of them.
But I tell you, one of the things that was interesting about watching The Wire, which is from the early 2000s, is it gave me a little bit of a glimpse into how, like, the police union and things like that work and how it manifests itself out in the streets, you know, in terms of, you know, crime prevention, so on and so forth. It was just interesting because, you know, I knew that story was based on reality. It was actually written by a former police chief.
Oh.
You know, so it was interesting to watch it through the lens of what was going on this summer, you know, with George Floyd and social justice. It was fascinating. I was kind of sad when it was over. Like, I felt, you know, like part of this thing. I was watching hours of it a day, which I never watched TV like that unless it was work. And I was really sad when it was over because not only did I enjoy it, I felt like I was kind of in a weird way learning, you know, similar to the way, you know, watching, you know, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was learning, you know, for me as a youth. You know, it was interesting. I highly recommend it.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely. So Demondrae, do you have any projects coming up or some cool things in the pot?
Sure. Yeah, I have a couple, as a matter of fact. I have a completed CD, you know, sitting in my computer on my hard drive, ready to you know, get out to the public at some point. COVID tabled that. You know, it's been done since February. So I have a CD of sonatas, you know, euphonium and piano. That's to come out, and 4 out of the 5 pieces on the recording were written for me. Doug Bristow wrote a sonata for me. Portuguese woman composer Anne Almeida wrote a short 1-movement thing for me, short 8 minutes. Barbara York's Child's Play sonata. Doug, Barbara, Patrick Schultz, the Rune Sonata. I mentioned him earlier. And then Anthony Barfield wrote a piece for trombone, actually, for Joe Alessi, Meditations of Sound and Light. So those are the 5 pieces on that. So I'm excited to get that out. And then a friend of mine, Shane Porter, is currently writing a piece for studio jazz orchestra that's going to all be computerized with trumpet and trumpet and euphonium as the feature. And he's literally writing it now. I have the first movement. It's based on civil rights struggles, and it's for myself and Jose Sabaja from Boston Brass. So that's in the mix now too. So I'm excited about that. But it'll be a virtual jazz orchestra, studio orchestra with euphonium lead and trumpet lead, and both of us have to improvise. So it's really like an old school Miles Davis jazz record, if you can remember when he was using strings and rhythm section and things like that. So that's kind of fun too. So that'll be happening at the end of this year as well.
Oh man, that's hip. I cannot wait for that to come out. Golly, like so.
It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome. I'm excited about it.
Oh my gosh, I gotta like put it on my calendar, save the date. I hope there's a lot of PR around it because I don't want to miss it. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, we're gonna do our best. You know, both Jose and I are typically handled, and my boy Shane, you know, he's one of the phenomenal musicians I've had the pleasure of knowing. We went to high school together, but his main job is he's a truck driver right now. But he has some of the highest creativity level of anybody I work with. He's incredible, and so we'll have to figure out the PR machine because none of us are great at it.
Oh, it is a machine. That's true. Well, before we let you go, we always like to ask, what advice do you give maybe your students, or we kind of have a lot of followers in this 25 to 34 budding professionals range. What do you tell those people, when they ask you for some career wisdom? Sure. You know, I start with, like most of us do, what worked for me. And that was staying true to myself. I never did try to do things because I thought that was going to be the thing that people gravitated towards. And the reason I sort of tout that so much is because there can be a certain honesty and integrity, to your work that doesn't feel cheap or have the opportunity to grow tired, because if you've invested in it, because it's of you, then usually it's lasting, and you'll go the extra mile to make sure that it has the type of quality that you want. So I start with that. The second thing I tell people is to keep your mind open, keep your brain open. That was advice I got from Fred Sturm very early in my career. Don't focus too early because you might miss opportunities that are just on the outside of what your focus is. And I feel like that's definitely benefited me. While I have my doctorate in trombone and I've done a lot of study in conducting, not a lot of people know those things. But because I've done those things, I've had opportunities on both sides of that. I've done a bunch of orchestral conducting, a bunch of band conducting, obviously brass conducting. And, I've played trombone, sitting in the Atlanta Symphony before. I shouldn't be able to do that. People know me as a euphonium player. But, because I can do these things, opportunities present themselves. And, through both those different arenas, not euphonium, opportunities have been afforded to me. And so, don't cast your net too narrowly early. And then third, truly realize that there's always more to learn, and keep learning, keep trying to learn, keep looking for opportunities to learn. Don't take any advice and throw it off to the side, unpack it and see what's there for you. So those are the things that I try to offer.
Oh man, he dropped so many nuggets. That's amazing.
Yeah, drop some things for me. I'm like, okay, I'm keep learning. I need to do this. I need to kind of bone up my work ethic because I'm impressed. Your son knew when to get out the car. He's gotten in the car. You drove and did an entire podcast interview. Like, what am I doing with my life? Yeah, impressive.
I tell you, that's one of the things that my life has afforded me is the ability to truly multitask efficiently. I'm not saying I won't say I'm the best at it that I've ever checked out, but we're all dealing with that now. None of us can focus solely on any one thing now. It's been so cool to watch all of my sort of soloist friends reinvent themselves virtually. They're up their website game. They're offering themselves as teachers now, whereas they may have wouldn't before because they didn't have time. We all have to focus on a lot of different things, or you might get left behind in the speed in which we move these days.
Ooh,
Absolutely.
that's good,
Yeah. COVID has definitely revealed that, and you got to keep elevating and keep moving forward.
That is true. Don't get left behind.
So, Demondrae, can you tell our audience how they can find you, like your website, your social media?
Sure. Yeah, sure. My website is pretty bland. It's old school. Don't make fun of me. It's very dated, but it's demondrae.com. My name, DEMONDRAE. And you can find me on all the socials by just typing that thing that I just spelled out for you. So I'm pretty active on Facebook, pretty active on Instagram. Love to answer questions there. I'm always happy to entertain people's thoughts and stuff that they share with me. We're at such a great time, for that. I wished I'd had access to whomever my heroes were back then. As people feel like they have access to me. So I'm all the way game for that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, Demondrae, thank you so much for chatting with us and with our audience today. This has been absolutely amazing.
I feel like I went to a conference. So.
My pleasure. I appreciate what you guys have done. I've been a Martin McCain fan since we first met, so he can tell you that story later if he chooses. But, I won't say I predicted what would happen, but I knew Martin would be somebody that people knew. So.
Well, can I say he talks about you all the time? Like, I have learned about you not only just because of your fabulous career, but this man, you're like his biggest brass idol. I'm like, this is a cousin.
He's my guy, and I told him a long time ago that I'd always have his back. So I hope I've lived up to it.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Likewise.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in today, everyone. Bye.
Wow, that was so inspiring, but also impressive that he didn't miss a beat while he was driving his son to the barbershop. Absolutely amazing.
We told him all he needed was like 90s hip hop with that move right there.
So if you like what you see, make sure you're sharing with a friend.
And subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit that little bell so you get notifications when we drop new performance videos or educational tips.
Make sure that you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at McCain Duo, and our website, McCainDuo.com.
See you later.
Bye.